Hey, Jennifer, did you hear that the CEO of Kellogg's is the new Marie Antoinette?
Oh, really? Why do you say that?
Well, his response to families struggling with the rising cost of groceries was, let them eat flakes.
Welcome to MILF.
I'm Courtney,
And I'm Jennifer.
and we are two moms into literary freedom. So, did you know that it actually wasn't Marie Antoinette that said, let them eat cake?
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that till last night when I was doing research for this episode. Because I was like, and I'll be honest, I saw the headline, let them eat flakes.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, a Marie Antoinette, reference. But then I read the article and it was actually like a princess. And they don't know who it was, but it was inaccurately credited to Marie Antoinette.
Okay.
But it makes sense because, like, the whole idea of the phrase was like, oh, someone was telling the princess or the queen or whatever, like, your people, the peasants, they don't have any bread. And she's like, well, let them eat cake then.
Yeah.
So it, like, shows the ignorance. It's like,
Right.
well, if they don't have bread, they're not going to have cake. But, like, she didn't know that. It's like,
Right.
They don't need bread. They can just
Out
eat
of
cake.
touch.
Yeah. And also, the translation obviously was French, right? It wasn't let them eat cake. It was let them eat brioche.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Which I love brioche.
It's a bread, right?
Yeah, but brioche is it's like an egg-based bread. So it's like bread that's used, that uses a lot of butter and egg. So it's like a cakey bread.
Okay.
So it's like the cake equivalent in those times.
I gotcha.
But the actual French translation is let them eat brioche. But it got...
I like let them eat cake better.
Yeah.
Or let them eat flakes. It has a little more of a ring to it.
Yeah, so let them eat flakes. Yeah, so this guy, the CEO of Kellogg's, Gary Pilnick, you said?
Yeah.
First of all, his annual salary is about $4 million.
Yeah.
So he's raking in $4 million a year.
He's classified as a multimillionaire.
He's not feeding his kids cereal for dinner.
No. But that's what he thinks, that poor families or families that are struggling,
The majority of families.
that's what they should do to cope, is have cereal for dinner.
Yeah, because there's like the commercial of Tony the Tiger, and he's like, repeat after me, cereal. And they're like, cereal for dinner. Or when I say cereal, you say dinner, cereal, dinner, cereal,
Wait, there's a
dinner.
whole commercial?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I don't know, like, if it's new or old or whatever, but, like, Kellogg's is basically saying, oh, you guys can't afford groceries? Then just buy more of our cereal and eat that.
Right, and they fail to mention how they up the prices of cereal, too.
Yes. It's actually not inflation,
No, it's greed, right?
Yeah, it's corporate greed. And so there's all kinds of data out there that isn't really getting picked up by the news, because what's the news covering these days? 4 different trials that Trump is facing, and all the millions of dollars that he has to pay out. They're covering the 2 different wars going on in the world right now, Ukraine and Palestine, and all kinds of other stuff. So, like, of course, there's just so much in the news cycle.
Yeah,
it's hard to get to everything.
Yeah, we can't keep up.
Yeah, but something that's really relevant to us, that directs us in impacts us directly, is the rising price of groceries. Mm-hmm. And it's not inflation, as so many these corporate or these CEOs want you to think, because what they're really doing is they are taking 15% cereal out of the box, mm-hmm. right? And then they're increasing the price by 15%.
Yeah. No, because we eat a lot of cereal, right? Because
mm-hmm.
I guess we're one of those financially impacted families.
Well, I think also kids like cereal. Yeah.
So I buy a bunch of cereal. My son loves it. Mm-hmm. We go through like a box every other day. Mm-hmm. I used to get a box of cereal for $4.50. Mm-hmm. Now it's $8.
Sorry, $4.50 is a lot to me.
Yeah.
$8 is like unfathomable. Like, that's crazy.
Like doubled.
Yeah. And so that's why, like, we go to Costco because honestly it's the only thing that we can do. And not everyone can afford Costco because there's a membership fee. So, some people don't want to pay the membership fee. And so, I don't know. I go to Costco. Do you go to Costco?
We do. we just got a membership last year.
Okay.
But it's not that cheap either. Like every time we've gone, we've spent like $500-$600.
Yeah.
And the groceries don't last that long.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we don't just get groceries, we end up getting other things. But it doesn't last us that much longer.
Yeah. So it's not obviously the perfect solution. But, Costco, compared to Sam's Club, does more to keep their prices stable. So, like, Costco will only have, like, an X number of products under their roof at one time. And they'll sort of force companies like Coca-Cola, for example, to keep their prices affordable.
Okay.
And I'm not explaining it the best way, but I know Sam's Club doesn't do it, so it's something special that Costco does that's like places like BJ's and Sam's Club doesn't do.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's why we like Costco, because they work harder to try and keep things more affordable.
Yeah.
But there's nothing they can do about Kellogg's,
right.
Like taking, a percentage out. And so what ends up happening is companies like Kellogg's end up making like a buttload of extra money, and so they like claim these unexpected profits.
Yeah.
It's like, we didn't know we were going to make this much money in the fourth quarter. Yes, you did.
Right. And it's like a lot of companies are having like record profits. Yeah.
And then they're turning around and taking that money and like putting it into dividends, which I'm not going to pretend like I know what that means, but I know it has something to do with the stock market.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I have no idea.
But basically they're like making money off of the money that they're already making by taking advantage of people like us.
And you know what it never does? It never trickles down to the employees.
Mm-hmm.
That whole, if the business is doing better and making money, it trickles down. That's all.
No, not when your annual salary is $4 million.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
So on that note, did you hear that Wendy's is planning to do like their, I forget what it's called, but where depending on how busy they are, the demand, they'll change the prices of their menu?
How in the hell is that legal? Is that legal?
I don't know.
Does that mean like it can be are there caps on the prices? Or does it go the other way?
I think because like Disney and Universal does this, which I hate because like for families who don't have like just enormous amount of money in their bank account, how do you plan? Like you don't know what the ticket price is going to be that day.
Yeah, you got to plan ahead. Yeah.
And so that to me is like so stupid, but I'm like, okay, I get it. It's like a park. It's more of a luxury item.
Yeah.
But a restaurant,
Wendy's,
a fast food joint, like you're telling me if I go at 1 p.m., the burger might be $8 versus at midnight it'll be $2. Like what? How does?
So I have to go to Wendy's at midnight so that I can afford it,
and hope that it's not busy then, because then you're. Yeah, so they backtracked it though.
Oh, they did.
I will say, because a lot of people were like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Wendy's doesn't have room to mess up.
No.
Listen, they're behind McDonald's and Burger King and Chick-fil-A.
Yeah. They backtracked it, and now they're trying to say like, no, it's not, our menu prices aren't going up, so maybe it is like what you're that's what they're saying now, right? After the response.
There has to be like a cap. Like a double bacon cheeseburger, whatever it's called, shouldn't be more than, I don't know, like $4, for example.
Yeah.
So maybe they're saying like if you come during like this like happy hour type time, it'll be like $2. But if it's like dinner time, it's going to be $4.
Yeah.
So if there's a cap on, if they're not raising their prices, then that's fine. But yeah, I could see. I mean, that's kind of the way that this country is going.
Yeah.
With like, all these corporations not really being regulated, and there's so much that we could talk about, but we have to talk about a book too. But like we'll just leave it at that. It's not inflation. If you want to learn more about it, there's someone you could follow on Instagram, RBREICH, Robert Reich or something. I think I mentioned him in the last episode.
Yeah, I think you did.
But I didn't share his handle in the show notes, but I'll do that this time. But he's really good, and also Sharon Says So. Those are two accounts I follow to get like sort of unbiased news, and they explain it in a really good way. And that's how I learned about this whole like it's not inflation thing, it's corporate greed. And he explained, the dividends and the profit in a really easy way. So, but the reason we're talking about all of this stuff is because it actually does tie into the book. And were there anything else you were going to say?
On that, no.
No? Okay. So there's a lot of, first of all, food references in this book. And so the book that we're covering today is called New Kid by, I always forget, Jerry Craft, I I didn't forget Jerry Craft. And it's a graphic novel, and the illustrations are awesome as usual. And there's a lot of food references, but there's also like financial disparity, and there's privilege, and there's a lot of talk about like financial aid and like kind of the stigma that goes along with financial aid. It's like, oh, you're a financial aid student, and like the stereotypes that go along with financial aid.
Yeah,
there's like a lot of like white characters that are sort of like what's it called when they like a white savior-esque kind of thing.
Okay,
and then it just comes off as like they think they're like doing something really good, and really they're just being racist and they don't realize it. So we're going to talk a little bit about this book and why it's banned. But didn't you say it was featured by the American Library Association?
Yeah, I saw that a recent post. They featured it as their book of the month for their banned book club.
Awesome. So
for Black History Month.
Right. So it's one of those books that I think is, at least in the state of Florida, probably removed by a lot of districts because of the Stop Woke Act. And a lot of districts are probably erring on the side of caution because it talks a lot about race. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I haven't read the book.
Oh,
so,
okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be telling you about it.
Yeah. I do have it. It was funny because I was going to let you borrow it because my son read it.
But then you lost it.
It's always on my bookshelf. Like I always see it there, and
it just
suddenly it disappeared. And I'm like, I have no idea where it went.
So what's funny is I actually have the second book, Class Act.
Okay.
And it's the same characters. And my daughter read both of these books. But I don't know how she read the first book. But we only have the second one, so I had to buy it, the Kindle version. And but yeah, I'm glad I have it because it's a great book. I'll share it with you. You're gonna probably just want to read it afterwards because it's such a good book.
I want to read it now because it's just in my nature to want to read it. Like you'll tell me about it, but I'm still like, I need to read it.
Yeah, of course. I'll do like a terrible job explaining it, and then you'll go and read it, and it'll be much better, I promise. But so it takes place with a black middle schooler, and he is a artist, and I think he's in like 7th grade, and his name is Jordan. And we talked in our last episode, we talked about colorism a lot. And there's colorism in this book with like the different shades of brown. And so Jordan is a lighter shade of brown. And he talks about, his experiences with like being sort of the outcast in his inner city school, with some of his darker skinned friends. So there's a lot of, discussion about like just because you're black doesn't mean that like you're not like discriminated against by your black peers,
right?
Which is what colorism is. And then there's another student named Maury, and it's the same situation. He's lighter skinned, but he has been going to this private school, which I'll get into in a minute, for such a long time that people call him Moreo because it rhymes with Oreo.
Okay.
And it's not because he's mixed, which I know Oreo is like a derogatory term for when someone is mixed.
Okay.
But in this case, they're actually using it as a derogatory term because he's like black on the outside and white on the inside, is what they're saying. So it's like, it's sort of like an insult, right? Because Maury isn't allowed to be who he wants to be without being labeled as like he's disappointing his like black culture, so to speak.
And I have seen that happen before where they accuse someone of acting white.
And to me, it reminds me of the book Stamped by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. Specifically the Stamped for Kids version. Did you read that?
Yeah, we read it. We did
it together?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if we both read it. But that's where I learned the word assimilationist.
That's right.
Which basically is someone who's racist, but maybe doesn't obviously no racists identify as like, well, hi, I'm Bob and I'm a racist. Like if you're a racist, you're not going to say you're racist.
Right.
But they're racists who believe that inferior groups, quote, inferior groups can become equal if they change. So it's like, oh, Maury, the boy in the book, is white or is black, but he acts white. so he's like a better black person than other black people, is what an assimilationist would.
I got you.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say like, oh yeah, well he's like a good black person, and I've heard that reference to Hispanics as well, like you know,
or like it's like a white person will say, "You're so well spoken."
Yes.
And what's that other word they always use? About like being able to
communicate.
Communicate in a really
it's
well.
not that
what is
one.
that word? Yeah.
Articulate.
There you go. It's like the ultimate assimilationist white lady response is, "Oh, Drew, you're such an articulate young man." You know, it's like that's your way of saying that, you know, I'm black, but like you are surprised that I can communicate so effectively.
Right.
It's like, oh, because I'm black, I can't communicate like the way that other people can communicate.
Yeah.
So,
and they think they're being positive. Like they're like, oh, you're doing good, but they don't realize they're being.
And we see that with the teachers in this book. So let me back up and explain.
Okay.
Jordan is, he lives in Washington Heights, which is a neighborhood in New York, and his parents want to send him to this like really fancy private school. And he wants to go to art school. And they're like, if you know, just give this school a chance. If you hate it, by the time you go to high school, we'll send you to art school. And so I think, you know, his parents, they're really well off. His mom works for like this huge publishing company, so they obviously want like what's best for their kids. So they send him to this fancy school. He's not on financial aid, but I think there are times in the book where it's assumed he's on financial aid because he's black. And one of his good friends in the book is on financial aid, and his name is Drew, and he's there and he's on financial aid. And then he's like, you know, one of very few black kids that go to the school. And then so you've got Maury, who kids sees and say Oreo, and he is not on financial aid either. And then you've got Jordan, Drew, and then the third one is DeAndre.
Okay.
And he's older, and, you know, he's like more of a handful, and he doesn't look anything like Drew, but Drew's teachers will constantly like call Drew DeAndre. Which it comes up a lot in the book. But DeAndre, he's not a bad kid. It's not like he gets expelled. He's like, he doesn't get into fights or anything, but like he's kind of a handful. Like he says things, he's kind of like, just like an obnoxious older kid. So
okay.
He's like a junior in high school, whereas these boys are like in 7th or 8th grade.
Okay.
So, but the point is, you know, there's a teacher and her name is literally Karen. And she's a white teacher.
When did the book come out?
I don't know. That's a good question. You'll have to look it up and let me know, because that would be
like, I wonder if it was before the whole Karen thing was like.
And I feel so bad saying that, because like I know some pretty awesome Karens, but I also know some pretty annoying Karens. So I just, you know, I love the idea of that. I think I've seen also like Janice, like, calm down, Janice.
Yeah.
I didn't say I hated my kids. I just said I wanted a break from my kids. You know.
Is that from The Office?
Janice?
Isn't Janice?
No,
from The
there
Office?
isn't a Janice in The Office. Is there? I don't think there's a Janice. Oh, there's a Jan.
A Jan. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking of.
but she's definitely a Karen.
Okay, New Kid came out in 2019, so they knew Karen was a Karen.
I think
that might have been on purpose.
It was a strategic pick for character name. So anyway, this is about Jordan trying to fit into his new school. And then, of course, there is a really annoying white kid, and his name is Andy Peterson. And so you can tell he's super rich just from, like, you know, the things that he says and how he brags about all of his expensive vacations and all that kind of stuff.
I've met an Andy before.
Yeah, and like the school is full of kids like that. And of course, not every kid is like that. So Jordan ends up realizing that, like, you know, there are certain kids that are super obnoxious and brag about, you know, being rich, and then there are other kids that are rich, but they're not obnoxious about it. And that's his friend Liam, who is his, like, quote, guide. And so it's the first day of school, and so he gets paired up with this white kid named Liam, and Liam, you know, maybe doesn't like him at first because Liam's got, like, kind of a tough home life. His dad is never home, and, you know, he's sort of processing that, and it takes him a while, but Liam ends up really liking Jordan, and they become really good friends, and Liam, like, you know, really grows as a character because he has, like, a good friend. And then the last character that I'm going to introduce is Alexandra, and she is a very eccentric young lady. I think she's Asian, since we're kind of telling everyone all the races of the characters. But the important thing to know about Alexandra is she uses a puppet to communicate.
Okay.
And she doesn't pronounce her L's on purpose.
On purpose. Yeah,
so
it's not like a
talk.
disability.
No, it's not a disability. It's like, hello, this is Honey Bunny, and this is this is Honey Bunny's friend Alexandra. And she goes on to say, we love to make puppets, and it's just totally weird.
Yes.
And so everyone's looking at her like, oh my God, what do we do? But she becomes kind of a stronger character later on too, because Jordan and Drew kind of like feel bad. They like recognize that she's sort of an outcast just like them. And so they're actually like nice to her, which I think is really cool. And this book is really good at sort of showing kids that like just because someone's kind of a weirdo doesn't mean like you can't be nice to them.
Right. I like that.
Mm-hmm. So another character is named Ramon. And so remember Andy, the annoying white kid? He's always saying racist things to Ramon, like, let's see, what does he say? Don't you guys just love tacos? Well, maybe not you, Ramon. I'll bet your mom's tacos are a lot better. And so you can see a picture of Ramon just sort of looking sad and Jordan just like looking like at Andy like, I can't believe you just said that. And so Andy's always making these like assumptions about like the food that Ramon eats because he's Hispanic.
Right.
And he always calls him Mexican. But he's actually Venezuelan. And we find out later in the book that he has been friends with Andy since kindergarten, and he's told Andy that he's Venezuelan.
So he knows that he's purposely, and I can attest to that happens a lot. Mm-hmm. A lot. Mm-hmm. So
I think I've even probably done that to you. Like, hey,
aren't you Mexican?
Like, tell me about this Mexican dish, Jennifer.
And see, like, I get that part because I do eat Mexican food, so I'm like, maybe I do know.
Yeah.
But
it's not your culture.
People just assume that we're Mexican, just right off the bat. Like, and I'm like, have you ever seen a map? Do you realize it's not
How
just Mexico?
Far away? Yeah.
Right. And actually, Guatemala is near Mexico. I'm Guatemalan.
Oh, okay.
But my husband is Venezuelan.
But Venezuela is not. I know that's far away, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's South America and Mexico is Central America.
Yeah.
Or is it considered North America?
It's actually considered
North
North
America.
You're Guatemala right. is central.
Yeah.
But it's like right at the border.
I think that Mexico is like the last country.
Mm-hmm. Might even be split in half, honestly. I don't know.
I know. I always assumed it was Central America, and then when my kids were doing their like geography lesson, I was like, "Oh, it's North America."
Ooh,
okay,
you learn something new every day.
My bad.
You're not Mexican. You don't need to know
I'm definitely
that.
not Mexican.
So you don't need to know that. It's fine.
But like constantly, we see it now with the whole "Build the Wall" chants and stuff. Like, go back to Mexico. You know how many times people have told me that? And I'm like, I'm not from Mexico, dum-dum.
Good job. Good save on the cursing. Since this is a junior episode, and this is safe for young ears if you want to listen to this in the car, because I don't think we said this, but New Kid is middle grade book, so like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. I mean,
all the way up to middle school, I think.
Yeah. I mean, all the way up to almost 40-year-old women, because it's a great book.
And you know, on that, you'll be surprised how many of these middle grade books are in high school because the reading levels are so low.
That's true. The reading levels are low, but also it's like sometimes you just want an easy book that's got cool pictures.
And graphic novels are really popular. Mm-hmm. So like
anytime you take a graphic novel out of a library, a piece of my soul just dies.
Because it's really popular.
It's what the kids want. Yeah. And this is such a good one.
And people think graphic novels don't count as like reading a book.
No, they do.
But their word count is super high.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know the study on it and everything, but it has like a great word count in it. And
yeah.
Don't knock a graphic novel.
Seriously, for sure. And also, I'm sure it stimulates like the visual part of your brain too, because the pictures are amazing. But so anyway, he comes home from his first day of school, and you can tell like he's sort of feeling ostracized from like the kids in his neighborhood and even his dad. So his mom is really the one that's pushing him to go to the school, and of course his dad is playing the supportive dad, but his dad's sort of like, he doesn't want his son to like become whitewashed.
Yeah.
And, that comes up later in the book, too, when his dad's like, okay, it's Christmas break. Like, we're going to celebrate Kwanzaa. I'm going to make you listen to all my old soul records and stuff. And oh, we're gonna go play basketball with the boys, and Jordan's just like not really into any of that.
He's an artist, right? He's more into
exactly. And so his dad's like trying to connect with him on that level and like share the cultural, you know, aspects that, you know, he experienced as a kid. And so the picture is really cool. It's got, you know, the left side, it's got all the kids from the private school that wear pink. Well, they call it salmon because it's part of the dress code is to wear salmon.
Okay.
So it's like, you know, bro, why are you wearing pink shorts? He's like, well, it's part of my dress code. And it's actually salmon. It's not pink. And so you've got all these like kids in pink and they're like pulling him by his leg to the private school side. And then you've got all of his black friends from the inner city neighborhood that are pulling him from his arm. And he's just sort of like caught in the middle. He's like, I don't know where I belong. Like,
right.
Do I belong in this private school or, you know, in this neighborhood where I grew up with all my friends? Okay. So that's sort of the struggle that he faces throughout the book. And he actually has to ride the city bus to the private school. Okay. So it's quite a long ways from his like inner city neighborhood. And he, since he's an artist, the book is like filled with comics that he's drawn. And one of the first comics that he has in the book is about, you know, him taking the bus. It's called Jordan's Tips for Taking the Bus. And basically, you know, when he gets on the bus, he's got his hood on, he's got sunglasses on, and he's like, in Washington Heights, I try to look tough. But then I get to Inwood, it's a little different. I can lose the hood. No one ever smiles in the morning, so you won't catch me doing that either. So it's like he's got to be tough in these places. But then he gets to a place called Kingsbridge, and that's where the public school kids get off, so he can take off his sunglasses. And he's like, I can even draw in my book. Because now he doesn't have to be tough, right? Okay,
so he's doing like code switching.
Yes.
Okay.
See, I knew there was a word for that. And of course you know the word for that. Thank you. It's code switching. I'm a white person who doesn't have to code switch, so I wouldn't know what it's called. That's one of my privileges.
Which I think code switching is more like how you speak, but I guess it is also how you change your demeanor and how you, yeah. I do a lot of code switching.
Really?
I do.
Oh my gosh, tell me more about that.
I think it comes naturally to us. Like, I say us, but,
yeah.
You know, so just depending, like, if I'm around, like, more Hispanic people, I definitely just, like, let my Hispanic side out more. And versus, I don't know, when I'm, like, around more. And I do this.
Like when you go out to lunch with our white friends.
Yeah. And I think also it's not just so much, it's like a professionalism, right? When I would go to work, I would suddenly, you know, like, I'm going to speak more professionally. I'm not going to use slang.
Because of the assimilationist attitude that our society has created.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. So I don't think I realize I do it. I just automatically switch.
Yeah. Wow. So then he gets to Riverdale, and then he says, I do my best not to look cool at all. No shades, definitely no hood. I don't even like to draw because people might think I'm going to use my markers to, quote, tag the bus. And then it's a picture of a police officer and a mom with her daughter, and they're all, like, looking at him, like, with, like, concerned faces, like, are you gonna do anything bad? And
this is in the book look, so I can see the picture. Okay. She's like clutching her purse.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you can see it too. Yeah.
That's only, I think there's just 2 visuals in.
I think it's hilarious that that's in book looks.
Yeah.
So they have a problem with like actually illuminating the stereotypes that have existed for hundreds of years.
Right. Like I don't see what the issue is with this page. Like
I think it's like, yeah, I guess it's like maybe there's a police officer and it's like insinuating that the police has a prejudice against him because he's black.
Let me see if it says why here.
And while you're looking for that, the comic goes on to say, Jordan says, I love quadratic equations, don't you? And then all their faces are like smiling and they're like, oh good, you know, he's one of those black kids, you know, he's an Oreo, he's black on the outside but he's white on the inside, you know. So they're like, oh, he's harmless, right? And so then he says, by the time I get to school I'm exhausted, which explains code switching.
Yeah. That makes sense. So it says here, this is how they classified it or tagged it. The illustration on the top of the page depicts a young African American boy sitting on a subway. A Caucasian woman and a little girl are sitting on the end of the same bench seat as the African American boy. The woman and a police officer are looking at the boy. The police officer is scowling. The text on the image reads, "Last comes Riverdale, where I do my best not to look cool at all. No shades and definitely no hood. I don't even like to draw because people might think I'm going to use my markers to tag the bus." The image on the middle of the page depicts the same individuals described above. A young man is leaning into the frame with his thumb up. A halo is depicted above the African American boy's head. The African American boy is saying, "I love quadratic equations, don't you?" The Caucasian woman and the police officer are smiling at the boy. So they flag that.
That is just, I don't even know how to explain that. Like, there are certain things where, like, yeah, okay, I understand, like, it's a gay character and you're anti-gay, but, like, this, I don't get it.
It's almost like they don't like the mirror of the book. Because this, like, is showing...
Yeah, it's too much true information for students to read.
And they don't want... They want, I guess, these books to be, what is this? I always confuse this word. Assimilist?
Assimilationist.
Assimilationist, yeah. So they don't want them to point out
what an assimilationist is.
Yeah, or the fact that Black people or minorities go through these things.
Code switching. Yeah, like I didn't.
Or how people react to them. How white people react to them.
Why is code switching a thing? You know, it's because the society that we live in has made code switching a requirement for people for non-white people. And it's a way of survival. Like you said, you did it sort of subconsciously. Like it was just an automatic thing. Like when you would go to work, and it was like that's like you were raised to do that subconsciously because like that's how you get through life. Because if you didn't, you'd be fired. Right. For no reason, like because you're too Hispanic. Right. So, and it's not, that's not to say like, oh, I go into work like cursing out my boss or anything, but it's like, I've heard so many stories of and of course I haven't experienced it myself, but I've heard so many stories where it's like, you know, Black women are you know, not fired, but like disciplined or like written up for like having too black of a hairstyle. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we have that case too now with the kid. I think it's in Texas that they want him to cut his hair. Oh, is he the Native American boy? No. Oh. He is African American. Okay. And he has it in braids. They're not long. Like I look at the picture of his hair and I don't see anything. That happens all the time. Like remotely. Like it's not like it's halfway down his back. Right. It's not. But even if it was, yeah. But because I don't have a problem. Wear your hair however the hell you want to. That's I don't care. But I'm saying, like, nothing that I could even be like, I don't see what they have a problem with. Well, it's all about control. Yes. It's control. And we see that with women, too. It's like the men are trying to control women, and, you know, the white culture is trying to control all the other cultures into kind of fitting them into this, like, certain box that checks all of these requirements. Yeah. And you know what sucks? The judge ruled that the school was in its right. Of course, and that's the other thing is the judges. Like we gotta get rid of these judges, like who and these politicians who are appointing these racist and sexist and misogynistic judges at the state Supreme Court level and at the Supreme Court level. Like, don't even get me started on Brett Kavanaugh because we're gonna talk about him next month for Women's History Month for sure. But yeah, all of this is connected, and it's just awful. And meanwhile, he's been missing school for months. So the whole, like, you know, kids need to go to school and all this is pro-life, like, you know, over a haircut. Yeah. Like, what's more important, that he's in class learning? Yeah. Or his hairstyle? And I will tell you, I know it's a little bit off topic, but dress codes and like the whole hair codes and all that. Very racist. Yes. Oh, totally. Very racist. That's why they always target minorities because, and women. Yeah. We'll go on that. But that's, you know, the intersection of race and gender, you know, is the fact that like a black girl, you know, at like a middle school has such a harder time than a white girl. So yeah, that's something we'll talk about. We're going to try and talk about all the things in March. Yes. So anyway, sorry, I went on a tangent. that was great. So this is where we get to the teacher, and her name's Karen, but obviously they don't call her Karen. It's like Miss Rowell, like Rawle or something, Miss Rowell or something. But the first day of class, she calls Drew DeAndre. And, like, when you're reading it, you're like, okay, it was the first day. You know, maybe she won't do it again.
Right.
But throughout the whole book, she calls him DeAndre.
Okay.
And DeAndre's like I said, he's more of a handful. And Drew is like this quiet kid. He's brand new. And he doesn't even look like DeAndre. Like, DeAndre has, like, braids.
Okay.
Like, shortish braids, kind of like what you're describing. And he's taller and about 4 years older.
So, like, yeah. So the only thing they have in common is their skin color.
Yes, and they aren't even the same shade, but they're similar in
Okay.
brown. Yeah. So,
She must not see color.
like, what the heck? Yeah. I'm Karen, and I don't see color. So anyway, he's like obviously upset about this, and then a black teacher is like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, actually, he's talking to Jordan, not Drew, and Jordan's like, "Well, you know, one of the teachers called me the wrong name because she actually also called him Maury."
So okay.
She's getting all her black kids mixed up. And so he's like, yeah, to this black teacher, he's like, well, she called me the wrong name, and he's like, I wouldn't read into it. I'm sure it's only because you're new. And that's on page 61. Is it tagged?
60. They didn't tag that.
Oh, okay. Maybe they tagged like 62 or 63 because then the next scene is a white guy walking by, a white teacher, and he goes, "Good luck this season, Coach Rick. I hope we go undefeated." And he's like this big white guy. And Jordan looks at the teacher and he goes, "Oh, cool. What do you coach? I didn't know you were a coach." And then he goes, "I'm not the coach." And then
God.
Jordan goes, "Oh, I wouldn't read too much into that." Or no, he actually says, "You must be new too," but it was an implication.
Yeah.
That, like, yeah. So he's like, "Yeah, I've been here for 14 years. I'm going to go now." And you could tell he's like mad.
Right.
Because he was just trying to tell Jordan like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Like, don't read into
Yeah.
it." And then he gets called by the wrong name and he's been there for 14 years. So I thought that was funny.
It is funny. And surprisingly enough, they didn't tag it.
That is surprising. Maybe they just
because there was an actual race brought up.
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't read the
They
book.
they do the control find.
Yeah.
Or of course, if they read the book, we always say this, they would have so much more to tag.
Damn it. Sorry.
I think you're good. We can leave that. We're doing our best to keep this a junior episode. I think we're doing really well. So, you know what? They do talk about slavery on page 89. Does that...
Yes, they have that tagged.
Do you want to go ahead?
They have page 77 tagged too.
Oh, I didn't take a screenshot of that.
It's not that bad.
Okay.
But it does have the word racist in it, so...
Yeah.
Clearly.
I didn't screenshot everything because I'm like,
Yeah.
we got to try to stay on topic here.
Well, just for context, right? Because it says, "What are you, an Eskimo?" Is that racist? I'm sorry if anyone found that offensive.
Yeah. Who said that again?
That's all it says.
Oh.
It doesn't say who said it or anything. So...
That was a teacher. A stupid teacher said that. So, you know, since you brought it up, it was a white teacher, and they were saying, I think they're like a white person that was like really aware of what, like hyper aware of what they're saying.
Okay.
But instead of like, like using their critical thinking skills to decide if it was racist or not, they ask the person of color if it was racist. So they're like putting the responsibility of educating racism on the person of color instead of figuring it out. Just Google it.
And saying Eskimo is racist.
Yes.
Just FYI.
Yeah. In the context, it wasn't like, it seemed like it was harmless, but it's like, you could just think of another way to say, "Are you cold?"
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was like Jordan was wearing his hood. And so, because he was cold. And that's the other thing that gets brought up is like, they're in New York and it's like springtime. So the teachers are like, "Oh, it's such a beautiful day. Why don't you guys go outside?" And Jordan and Drew are like, "It's freezing outside. Like, why would we go outside?" And I think he had his hood up because he was cold, because it can be cold in March in New York. And so I think that's where the Eskimo comment came from.
Oh, okay. See, context matters.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to guess they didn't have a problem with the fact that it said, "What are you, an Eskimo?" I think is that racist?
Yes.
That's the problem that they had with this.
Exactly. I agree. 100%. So yeah, go to page 89. And this is where Drew and Jordan they start to talk about...
Okay.
Oh yeah. So this is where Karen, the teacher, things get heated here. So just go ahead and read it, I guess. Or
what they tagged is 2 African American boys are talking to one another. Well, Jerome, we'd better break this up before they think we're starting a gang or something. And that's it.
Okay, so
no context. I don't know why.
I will explain that to you. That is awesome. So the reason that he calls him Jerome is because they're making fun of the fact that that they're being called like different names because the white teachers can't keep them apart. And so what they're doing is they were talking about like financial aid. So Drew is expressing to Jordan. He says, these are the things that bother me. Like whenever a class talks about slavery or civil rights, everyone stares at you, right? And financial aid. I even got stared at when we talked about minority partnerships in businesses because they're the minority in this
so
largely
of course
white.
They're going to assume right away that anything that has to do with financial aid or anything like that, they must be on it.
Exactly.
And we just saw this today in one of our local groups. Someone was complaining that they didn't have school choice, and one mom went with her full chest, went on there and said, well, it's because there's all these kids coming in who don't speak English.
Illegal immigrants, she said.
Illegal immigrants, yeah. And now our kids can't have school choice because of that.
And she was complaining about the fact that there were, like, she said 4 or 5 non-English speakers in her son's ELA class.
Yeah.
Like, that's a bad thing. It's like, oh, maybe your son could pick up a few phrases from a different language.
And not knowing English does not mean you're here illegally.
No, of course not.
That's just like the most asinine thing to say.
And she's just mad because I don't understand. Did she think that like her son wasn't going to get the best like ELA experience because there were non-English speakers in his like what's the problem with that? When I was a teacher,
it's too much culture for her kids.
I loved having non-English speakers in biology because biology is sort of like it's like it's the language of Latin, right? And so like I would communicate with my non-English speakers like in science terms and they loved it. They did a great job and I don't know, it was a different experience, but it was a positive experience. Right. It wasn't a negative experience.
Yeah, no, but like right away, that was a reason kids don't have school choice. They always point it to a minority somehow.
Exactly. Yeah. Gotta put the blame there. And then Drew says, he's talking about his grandmother and how he lives with his grandma. And he's like, I don't really talk to this about my grandma. I don't want to stress her out. She says that in order to be successful one day, I need to get used to being a, quote, fly in the buttermilk, end quote. And I'd never heard that before. Yeah. And I thought that was...
if you could see me, I have like an odd expression looking at you like, huh? What does that mean?
But you can figure it out what it means. And I don't know. I liked how he explained it that way. But so anyway, here comes the fun part. They throughout the book they call each other like obvious black names. So like Jerome, Daquan, like I don't know. As I get there, I'll read them out so that you can. Oh, Demetrius, stuff like that.
Okay.
So Jordan's like, "You got it, Demetrius. I'm glad we finally got to have this talk." And then Drew, who's Demetrius in this example, goes, "Later, dog." And then Karen comes out, Mrs. Karen, and she goes, "DeAndre?" And he goes, "It's Drew." And she goes, she doesn't even say like, "Oh, I'm sorry." She goes, I really don't think it's nice for you to call Jordan a dog.
Oh my gosh.
And then Drew was like, I didn't really, it was just a joke. And then Miss Karen says, he's a human being, not a dog.
Right, that's what you're worried about, but you don't even bother to know their names.
Well, this is why I love Drew so much. And then Miss Karen says, I think it would be nice if you apologized. And Drew says, and I think it would be nice if you apologized for always calling me DeAndre. And then it gets heated, and she's like, excuse me, young man. And
of course, now they're going to say he's being defiant.
Exactly. And you know what? This is just a really good example, of what actually happens every day in schools. Yeah. You've got these white teachers who don't have diversity training because it's illegal to do that in Florida. Right. And before it was illegal, it was still not something that every school or district did. But it's important that, all teachers have diversity or DEI training, And then he goes on to say, besides, Andy, which is the annoying white kid, calls people dog all the time, and you never say anything to him. And I'm not sorry, because Jordan knows I was just playing. But I'll tell you what I am sorry for. I'm sorry I ever came to this stupid school. And then he gets in trouble, I think, like, he has to, like, go to detention or something like that.
Of course, yeah. See, and all he was doing was standing up for himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I always tell my kids that. I always say, you know, like, if a teacher gives you a hard time for standing up for yourself or someone else, you know, there's nothing that they can really do to you. They can call me, right? But I promise you're not going to be in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm just trying to give them the confidence to stand up for themselves, because teachers, man, they can be, like, really authoritarian.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
But, you know, I'm not saying this negatively towards you. It's going to come off that way.
No, go ahead.
But we have that privilege that we can tell our kids
Absolutely.
Because,
you know, like, yeah, because if a black mom was telling that to, you know, the black son, then, you know, he could get expelled. Mm-hmm. You know, he could get treated poorly for the rest of the school year. His teachers could hate him. So, yeah, it's definitely a privilege for sure. Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it to come off like I was saying you were privileged or like...
No, you got to call me out on my privilege.
It's not calling you out, because it's not what I'm doing.
But
just pointing out that I know that I could get away with doing it too, but I know more than likely a black mother going in and doing it.
Well, you have a son, right?
Yeah.
And I could see how, you know, the older he gets too, and if, you know, if there are issues where, because, you know, with boys, we were just talking about, you know, the intersection of race and gender, but, like, a white boy versus a Hispanic boy, you know, they're going to be treated differently in terms of, like, you know, not doing super well on a math test, for example, you know, or slipping, into their grades are slipping. Like, I've seen this as a teacher. I've seen it happen where, you know, the white boy has more opportunities to you know, maybe switch classes because they needed a different teacher. Right. Whereas the Hispanic boy would just be labeled as a troublemaker.
Oh, that's true. You know, and I've never dealt with that yet. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit, but not that I've noticed. Mm-hmm. But I can see that, yeah. Because
think about it this way. If I'm a white mom and I'm like, my kid is failing and he's super smart and he shouldn't be failing, you need to change his class immediately. You know, I'm the white Karen mom that's going to, you know, get shit done. And, you know, I just cursed there. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. And so then my kid gets a new teacher. But, you know, I would imagine it would be a little harder.
Yeah, well, you have me thinking now, because I've been trying to get CJ's class changed because he's not doing well, and now I'm like, is that why it's not happening?
That's kind of why I brought it up, because you've talked to me a little bit about that. Yeah. And in our discussions, I've been like, well, I would just change his teacher. And after hearing your experiences, it sounds like it's not that easy. No. So, and I don't know if that's because I'm white. You know, I'm not saying that it is, but, like, as a teacher myself, I have seen parents struggling to do that. And, you know, teachers can't make that decision. It's an administrative decision. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm
looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah. I can help you out. Just let me know. I'll pull the white girl, the white Karen.
I brought my white friend to talk to you.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so back to the book. So Jordan's parents go to parent night, and they meet Jordan's teachers, and of course this is just what happened, like, with the whole Eskimo incident, where a teacher tells his parents, like, it was Miss Karen again. Miss Karen says that you and Drew don't associate with the other kids. You stay inside while the rest of the class is outside. What's going on? Are the kids picking on you? And Jordan says, no, it was cold. Like, we didn't want to go outside. It's winter. Like, we didn't want to go outside. And that happened once. And so, of course, it's Miss Karen. Right. Because she was called out for being a Karen by Drew. Okay. And so, you know, teachers do that. Like, they want to cover their butts. Yeah. And then they go on to say, we met Alex's parents. And then I forgot to tell you about Alex, not Alexandra. Oh, okay. Alex is a boy, and he is also an artist. And so Drew and him are friends because they like to draw together. Okay. And he's just a nice boy. But they mistake Alex's parents for Alexandra's parents. Oh, because they're both Asian. No, actually, it's just because of their name, Alex and Alexandra. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if race has to do with it. I don't think Alex is Asian. It's hard to tell when they're cartoons, you know?
Yeah.
but no, it's because Alexandra goes by Alex at home.
Okay, my Alex says that too.
Oh, okay, there you go. Only your Alex doesn't communicate with puppets.
No.
So anyway.
I would love her if she did. Okay.
Listen, we're not hating on people that communicate with puppets, but it does make life a little harder.
It does. I would probably ask her to just do it at home with us in a safe environment.
I will. There's a reason why she does it, and I'll get to that soon. So anyway, it results in Jordan having to be friends with Alexandra, because Alexandra the next day comes up to her or to him and is like, "Oh, your parents." Here, let me see if I can find it.
Oh, okay. I mixed this up. So I thought it was the teacher that mixed up Alex and Alexandra. Okay, so
sorry.
That's why I thought the teacher confused parents, but it was Jordan's parents.
No, I can see why you would think that, because the teacher confuses everyone.
Right.
But
okay.
no, it was Jordan's parents. They were introduced like, these are Alex's parents. And
so it wasn't because
No.
He had no idea the ethnicity of Alex. Okay,
yeah.
I got it now.
Yeah, sorry. No, thank you for clarifying that. But they actually end up getting into like a little fight, the parents, about, who wants what's best for their son. Like, do you want what's best for him, or,
Jordan's parents.
Jordan's parents,
okay.
yeah. And Jordan's dad is like, well, you just want him to go to this fancy school. He actually wants to do art school. So then they, you can tell like it's sort of being hard on Jordan. But anyway, the next day he goes to school, and then Alexandra, the puppet girl, is like using the puppet to communicate to him, and he's like, your parents said that you love Alexandra or something like that. And so Jordan's like, what? No. And then he realizes the mistake, but then he sees how sad Alexandra is when she's like, oh, you didn't actually say nice things about her.
Right.
Like Alexandra was like, oh, I thought it was because, we
were friends.
Yeah. And so actually it's Drew that says something, not Jordan. Jordan's like, oh, okay. Like, I just want this conversation to end. But then Drew comes up and was like, hey guys. And then he sees how sad Alexandra is. And then he says, hey, do you want to go for a walk? And then she gets super excited. And then they all go for a walk together. She's still super weird, but they go for a walk.
Right. Which is cool. They're not trying to change her. They're just like, yeah, we're going to accept you how you are.
Exactly. And the picture's really funny because it shows her like floating.
Oh, because she's so elated.
Because she's so excited, like she's just floating, yeah. But at first to me it seemed like she was like, it was more like exorcist to me. I was like, ugh. But then I was like, oh wait, no, it's not supposed to give off exorcist vibes. That's just where my brain went. It's not the illustrator, it's just my weird brain.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's floating because she's so happy. And so, they give her compliments and, they just become like this weird set of friends. And then at the end of the conversation, Drew says, have a great break, Alexandra. I'll text you tonight, Joaquin. Sounds good, DeMarcus. So they just, throughout the whole book, they keep this up, which is funny. So remember how I said there's lots of food references in this book? So, in the next part of this book, Jordan reconnects with his grandpa who moved really far away, and they used to live together. But anyway, he comes back for a visit since it's winter break, and they go to this Chinese restaurant, and they start talking about the different types of food because Jordan is telling his grandpa all about his new friends, and he basically says, he whispers it. He's like, he's white, he's talking about his white friends. And then he's like, I also have a black friend, and so essentially what comes out of this conversation is the grandpa's like, remember when, you used to come to this restaurant and you would only order shrimp lo mein? You used to, love shrimp lo mein, blah, 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 whatever. And he's like, but then, you came back and you really liked the General Tso chicken and the pepper steak. And so he's comparing, I think, the pepper steak is Drew, and the General Tso chicken is Liam.
Okay.
And the, what's the other one that I said? The shrimp lo mein?
Yes.
Those are his old friends.
Oh, okay. From where he lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sorry, I keep trying to go to the next page, but my computer isn't. There we go. So his grandpa's like, let's order all three. So he orders all three.
Okay, so the symbolism is you can have it all.
Yes, exactly. Which I just love that. He's like, and so Jordan's like, oh, I can't believe you ordered all three of my favorite dishes. And he's like, oh, you can have all three of your favorite. Like, you don't have to choose. And so I just thought that was really cute.
That is cute.
Mm-hmm. So then after that conversation, for the first time in the book, they're on winter break, he invites Liam and Drew to play some video game. They said it, but it was like Halo or something.
Okay.
I don't know. Some video game where they all have like the headphones and they're all communicating and it's like, oh, do this, whatever. And so it goes really well. And all three of them like have a great time. And then, when they go back to school, they become three friends instead of just like hanging out separately.
Gotcha.
So then at the end of the video game session, Drew says, Happy Thanksgiving, Jaquavius. And then Drew says, same to you, Darius. And then Liam's like, wait, what, who? And then he goes, inside joke, Liam, happy Thanksgiving. And then he goes on to say, General Tso's chicken with pepper steak wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad at all. So, are there any, I feel like I'm going too fast. Is there anything that Book Look is tagged or?
Okay, so Book Look, I'll tell you what it tagged. This might be where he was talking to his grandfather. Mm-hmm. Well, there's Liam. He's my guide, so he's the one who showed me around. Mm-hmm. I didn't think he liked me at first, but I'm pretty sure he does now. He's, white.
Yeah, so anything about race, of course, they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it also tags the image on the bottom of the page. This is page 128. Depicts a group of books near a label reading African American escapist literature.
Oh, yeah.
The titles of the book read Escape from Gang Life, Escape from Slavery, Escape from Poverty, and Escape from Prison.
Yeah, and I'll get into more of those books later.
Okay.
Because it's basically saying, like, these are the books that feature black characters that are available. And for a long time, that was the case. And so it's like a white teacher, which I think this happens later in the book, Karen is like, oh, I have the perfect book for you. And it's like about a black kid who like struggled through slavery. It's like, and meanwhile, this white kid gets this book about like being a magician.
Right.
It's like, what?
Okay.
But so yeah, that comes up later.
It's kind of like when we tell women, like, oh, you could be a housewife, but we tell men that they could be astronauts and they could.
Similar.
I see that similarity, but different, but similar. Yeah,
like in the books that we read as girls, all of the women were like grew up to be moms.
Right.
Whereas boys read books that, they could grow up to be an astronaut or anything that they wanted.
And here it's basically telling black children, this is how you stay out of a gang. This is how you escape slavery.
Successful. Yeah. Instead of reading
how you don't end up in prison. Like that's where they're destined to go, which is right. That's they're saying like if you don't if you don't do this XYZ, this is where you end up.
That and you're not good enough to read like sci-fi.
Right.
Or you're not good enough to like read about books that are actually fun and interesting.
Yeah,
and not
you can only
sad.
read about bettering yourself.
Exactly,
because you need to better yourself more than the white kids.
Or like here's a book about like how hard your ancestors worked. Just stuff that's not fun. But yeah, I think it comes up a little bit later. But before,
as if their family doesn't let them know like. The truth about slavery, because I doubt.
Right, it's like
I doubt that book is gonna
exactly. It's like,
whitewashed.
Did you hear about this thing called slavery? I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Right. Have you heard?
Here's a book, whatever. But anyway, after winter break, I don't know. Oh no, sorry. After Thanksgiving break, that's what it was. A little confused there. It's Thanksgiving break. They come back and they do. The Miss Karen is like, okay, we're gonna do Secret Santa, and it's required. Like. You have to pick out 3 presents for your Secret Santa. 2 of them can be homemade, but one of them needs to be a $10 purchase. And so Drew raises his hand and he goes, is there financial aid for those who qualify? Obviously, he's joking, right? But the teacher is like, looks at him like she doesn't know what to say. She like can't tell if he's joking or whatever. And then the bell rings.
So he's like holding her.
Yeah. He's giving her a hard time. Yeah. I love it. I think it's great. And so Jordan's like, dude, what was that about? And he's like, I don't care, what she thinks. She's never going to like me anyway, so I might as well give her what she wants, right? And so Jordan's like, well, I just don't want anything bad to happen to you. Like, he's worried. He doesn't want him to get expelled or anything like that. So But anyway, they get their Secret Santas, and then Jordan gets a girl named Ashley. Liam gets one of the bullies, I don't know, and then Drew gets someone named Graham that he doesn't really know. So it's like an interesting thing because they don't really know these people and they have to like buy presents for them.
Okay.
And that comes up later with Ashley because she doesn't. Sorry, I keep my computer keeps beeping at me. So Ashley ends up getting Drew, and we don't know this later. But what Ashley does is she gets him all of these like stereotypical black presents. And so Drew starts really reading into it. So one of the things that Ashley gets Drew is on the first day of Secret Santa are these basketball shaped cookies. And so he's like, I don't even play basketball, like, so he's like pissed off about that. And then the second Secret Santa gift is a gift certificate to Kentucky Fried Chicken. And
my God.
He's like, and so Jordan's like, cool, I love Kentucky Fried Chicken. And Drew's like, really, Jordan?
Right.
And then the third gift is a chocolate Santa. And so Drew's like really reading into these. And then Ashley runs up to him and Ashley's like, hey Drew, did you like my presents? I got you the basketball shaped cookies because I saw the Knicks poster in your locker, and I got you the KFC tickets or gift certificate because it's my favorite restaurant, and I hope that you want to go with me sometime. And then the chocolates, he's like, and she said, and chocolate's my favorite dessert, so I got you a chocolate Santa. Doesn't he look so yummy? So it was completely innocent. Yeah. But Drew, of course, he's got his guard up because that's his life,
and we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done that.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know.
We definitely sometimes are like, was that intentional or was that, what were the intentions?
I can see that.
We do look into it more than,
right. It would be like if I got you for Secret Santa and gave you a bunch of empanadas, right?
Right.
Which kind of comes up later because, but instead of empanadas, it's a sweet potato pie.
Okay.
But I'll when I get to that, I'll get to that. But see, I told you there's so much food in this book.
Yeah.
And it's relevant because, food sort of brings us all together. It's something that we all need. But, sometimes we can't afford it. And, the food that we can afford is like sweet potato pie instead of watercress and endive sandwiches, which comes up later in the book when when Jordan goes to Liam's house and he's like, oh, what's for lunch? And he goes, watercress and endive sandwiches. And Jordan's like, I have no idea what that is.
I'm like, I don't know what that is
and
either.
It's like, I think it's like a rich person lunch.
Yeah, it sounds
I don't know
fancy.
what endive is, but I know that watercress is like,
I know.
Yeah.
It's similar to arugula.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's a leafy, salad plant type thing.
Yeah. So it's like just like rich people food, I guess.
But I don't know what it goes with. I eat a lot of arugula. I don't eat a lot of watercress.
Yeah. I don't know.
But
I don't even know what it
endive,
is.
what is that?
I think endive is like a leaf. Like a leafy green.
Leaves on leaves?
I don't know.
On bread?
I think it's on bread. Yeah. But anyway, then they go to the book fair, and this is what you were saying with the African American escapist literature.
Oh, okay.
And then actually, I do want to take this point to point out, that the author does a lot of author drops in here. So the author talks about Percy Jackson and the new Wimpy Kid and a couple other graphic novel series such as Amulet. And
that's a popular one.
And Bone. Which are Bone is, I actually have a few of the Bone books. It's a graphic novel series. And the art is really cool. The illustrations are really cool. So they talk a lot about that. And, but they, this is where the teacher, Miss Karen, which is so funny because when my daughter plays school with her younger siblings, she always takes on this persona and she calls herself Miss Karen. And she plays the part so well.
Did she get it from this book?
She knows maybe she did because she read this book.
Right.
But she knows what a Karen is.
Yeah.
And so she just thinks it's so funny.
That's funny.
And she's just like, I'm Miss Karen. I'm like, oh, don't do that outside the house, okay? But anyway, it's not Miss Karen. I misspoke. But a different teacher, a different Miss Karen, an older white teacher, says, boys, I picked the perfect books out for you. And then the white boy, I forgot his name, but he's really nice. He's the one that also draws.
Okay.
She gives the white boy
Alex.
Alex, thank you. Yeah. The Magic of Magical Magicon, which is so fun. A Magical Adventure, which is not a real book, but it's just the point. And then she gives Maury The Mean Streets of South Uptown, A Gritty Tale of Survival, which is so funny because Maury was born and raised in, like, you know, with the silver spoon in his mouth. But he's black, so he gets this black book. And then the lady goes on to say, oh, is it tagged?
Is it page 129?
Yeah, I'll let you read it.
So it says, an older woman hands a young African-American boy a book. The woman is saying, you're really going to identify with Dequel, the protagonist. He suffered so much growing up in poverty without a father. The boy is saying, because they don't even know who the characters are. So I'm assuming this is...
oh my gosh.
I can't think of his name. Drew, right?
Yeah. No, it's Maury.
Maury, I'm sorry. So Maury says, thanks, Miss Brickner, but my dad is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Oh, that's right. And then she goes, oh, and then she goes to find Drew. She's like, oh, let me go find Drew. So did she think Maury was Drew, maybe?
Oh, maybe. See, it ends here with the Fortune 500 company.
Okay, yeah, because then it shows that she goes to look for Drew to give Drew the book.
But it's funny that the way they write it, an older woman hands a young African-American boy a book. So clearly they didn't read the book.
No, of course not. They don't even know the names. Yeah. So then Jordan draws, like, in his comics, he draws this whole experience, and he, like, talks about how, like, the only books that are available to African Americans are, like, Mean Streets of South Uptown and Gritty, you know, where the main character lives in the hood, comes from a broken home, just wants to live and doesn't have a father, you know, whereas the mainstream book heroes are lives in a magical kingdom, lives in a stable home, wants to live better, and his father is the king, you know, so... And, you know, it's true.
Yeah, and we see this in movies, and this is why we get excited when we see, like, Black Panther, you know? Or I got excited with Black Panther, too, because it had the Latin characters in it, or Hispanic characters.
I gotta watch those.
And I was, like, super excited because, I can't remember their names. Oh, no, I'm saying it wrong.
I have no idea.
The character, right? The villain in this movie... His, the actor that birthed him, it was just like a 5-second scene. She's from Guatemala. So I was like, oh,
you know, see, representation matters.
So, you know, we get excited for that.
Yeah. So that made me think, you know, when I was a kid, like, of all the books that I was into, like Harry Potter, for example, it's a white hero, right? You know, and that's just one bad example, but that's kind of like the case, you know, in the 90s. But now that my daughter is, like, such an avid reader, there are some really good examples that feature Black characters as heroes, such as Amari.
Yes, and the Night Brothers.
In the Night Brothers, and then there's a sequel, Amari, and something else I forgot.
Yeah, I don't remember. My kids love that book.
Yeah, and so that is an awesome, but, you know, the author does incorporate race in there a little bit, but it's still it's a magical book.
Yeah.
And then there's another one called Sal and Gabby Break the Universe.
Oh, okay.
And that is, those feature Hispanic characters. So, CJ would like those.
Yeah, he might.
Does he like magic? We
do. I like a lot of fantasy, and so he hears me, like, listening to books, and so he's very intrigued. So right now we're reading The Raven Heir, which is one of, like, the Sunshine State readers.
Oh, okay.
And I knew he was going to like it, but the cover has, like, a girl on it. Oh. So he was like, he kept trying to, like, skip it. Oh. And now that we started, he's, like, really into it.
Okay, good. Well, he's going to love Sal and Gabby because it's a boy and girl on the cover. And it's very magical. And Magnolia read it, and she was like, Mom, I've never read a book that made me laugh out loud. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, this was the funniest book ever. And there's a new one. There's two of them. And so she's really excited to get the second one. So I'll give you the first one.
And I'm reading currently Legendborn, which is by Tracy Dion.
Oh, yeah, look at the cover of that one.
So it's also like a fantasy. But
she's hot, too.
Yeah. So it's also by a Black author.
And it looks like a Black protagonist, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Female protagonist, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, the part about the books was really important, and I just wanted to give a shout out to those fantasy books that feature the Black characters. And so we got to put those in the show notes too. So anyway, I told you about the whole Secret Santa thing, and then Jordan gives Ashley, so Ashley's the one that did the basketball cookies and the Kentucky Fried Chicken gift certificates. So Jordan gives Ashley a sweet potato pie, and Ashley's like, why would you make a pie out of potatoes? He's like, they're sweet potatoes. And he has to explain to her. He's like, have you ever had sweet potato fries? And she's like, oh, yeah. And he's like, do you like them? She's like, I love them. He's like, then you're going to like this pie.
Right. I've never had sweet potato pie.
It's good. I think it's more of a Southern thing than anything, really.
Well, I didn't like sweet potato before, and then I had sweet potato casserole, finally. Mm-hmm. And I think the first time I tried it, I didn't like it, so I'd avoid it. Mm-hmm. But recently I tried it again, and I'm, like, hooked.
I love sweet potato casserole.
So now I make it for Thanksgiving, and, like, everyone else is like, and I'm like, good. More for me.
Yeah, me and my youngest, we're the only ones that eat it. And if she wants to put marshmallows on it, I'm like,
I probably should try sweet potato pie.
Yeah. I think you can just get it at Publix, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's I think it's just like a common crop in the South.
Yeah.
I don't know. Apparently, potato. Well, I know the county we live in, our county logo is a potato.
Really?
Did you know that? Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Because Flagler really has a lot of potatoes. Like, I don't know. If you go out to Bunnell, it's like all potato and cabbage fields.
I've seen the cabbages.
No, you don't see the potatoes.
That's true. They're underground. Yeah.
Anyway.
Why haven't I seen the potatoes?
Where are those potatoes? So anyway, let's see here. I think I covered all of this. Oh, so now Jordan, he's at school and he's reconnecting with some of his neighborhood friends because, there's a little bit of disconnection because he's going to a different school. So it's like, oh, are you better than us, kind of thing. But his friend comes over and they play video games and they exchange stories about what's going on at school. And so his friend, it's on page 144. Do they talk about it?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and read that then.
So on what Book Look says is 2 young African-American boys are talking to each other. But sometimes it's rough. Like last week, this kid came to school packing. He brought a gun to school? Yep, for protection. Luckily, the security guards found it. That's all they...
Oh, okay. Well, they left out the best part.
Oh, of course.
Okay, so
the
then...
context, you mean?
Yes, exactly. So then Jordan responds and he goes, his friend responds and says, I bet that never happens at your school, the private school. And so Jordan responds and goes, are you kidding? Last week they found a Snickers bar in this kid's locker. And then his friend goes, so? And then Jordan goes, duh, we're a nut-free school, son. That thing was packing, all right, packed with peanuts.
That's funny.
So funny.
That's funny.
And, it's just an interesting, it's a contrast to 2 very different schools, which is very real.
Very real. Yeah.
And it's tagged because Mom Truly really doesn't want the truth to come out, that things are different. And maybe things shouldn't be so different, and maybe everyone should have a chance to go to a private preppy school, which I think you have a 5-star story about later.
Yes.
But we'll have to wait till I get through the book. I promise I'll go faster.
You're good.
Okay. So then Jordan ends up going to Liam's house, and it's like a huge mansion, and Liam's like kind of self-conscious about it. He's like, don't judge. Like, yeah, I'm super rich, but like it doesn't really matter because they're really good friends, and Liam's really nice to him. And Liam, like I said, he doesn't have a lot of friends, so he's really thankful that Jordan is his friend. So he buys him this really expensive Christmas present.
Okay.
It's a 2K24, which is a video game, basketball video game. I only know this because my son is obsessed with it and he plays with his dad all the time.
And video games are expensive. They're like $60 a pop, right?
Yes, and so while Jordan's family can afford to send him to this school, he doesn't get expensive gifts because, his dad's just sort of, his dad grew up, not rich, obviously. Right. And so when you grow up in a certain way, like you tend to keep those
habits.
Yeah. So his dad like refuses to buy him anything new, right? Okay. So his dad has never bought him a new video game before. Come Christmas morning, his dad bought him the new video game. But what was so sweet about this is Jordan didn't tell his dad that his friend had already bought it for him. Yeah, so he like let his dad have that. Yeah. Because like I said earlier, his dad felt like he was like losing the connection, with his son and like their important like cultural traditions like Kwanzaa. And so there's a whole page that Jordan drew about them celebrating Kwanzaa, which is really cool because it, for someone who's never celebrated Kwanzaa, it's really cool to learn about it and to read about like other people's experiences. Was anything tagged?
No. Let me
Okay.
see. Because the last thing they tag is page 216.
Oh, okay,
So
I'm not
before
there.
that, it was the whole gun thing.
Okay.
But yeah, so far from what you're telling me, the book seems like it covers a lot of things that are good for kids to learn about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, different religions, different cultures, being nice to other kids.
Different experiences too.
Yeah.
Like how you can be a light-skinned black boy and be teased by your darker skinned black boys too. Or like there's a picture in the book where someone comes up to Jordan, like a girl. Oh, it was spring break, and they all went on their lavish, crazy spring break vacations and got tans. And so this girl comes up. He doesn't even know her. Just this freaking stranger.
I already know where this is going.
And she's like, look, I'm darker than you, Jordan. You know? It's like, okay, Janice, you can go sit down now. So, like, he brings that up, and he's just, like, you know, annoyed with that. But then Drew makes a joke, and he's like, I'll win that competition. How do you like my tan? You know, I got it at home. Because he didn't go anywhere. He's like, where'd you go? Oh, he's like, I didn't go to... the regular Walmart. I went to the super Walmart.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, that's important to discuss, too, because a lot of kids, it makes you think, like, maybe I shouldn't brag about all the great things I did.
Very true.
Because other kids didn't get to experience that.
Yep, I agree, 100%. So, now I get to tell you why Alexandra wears a puppet on her.
Oh,
her
yeah,
hand,
okay.
Which I was super invested in, and I was like, I need to know why this girl is wearing this puppet. And because, you know, she's like on the same level academically, so to speak, as everyone else, but, you know, she's not neurotypical. She's neurospicy, which I've seen on TikTok. Have you seen that on TikTok? Like, there's like this neurospicy family that takes videos of themselves, and I watch these videos and I'm like, I'm neurospicy. Like, I don't use a puppet to communicate, but but you know, there are levels.
Yeah. Well, I shared this yesterday, which I'm not diagnosing myself, but it's like, oh, if you have like 1,000 screenshots on your phone that you never use, you might have
neurospicy.
It's an ADHD, and I was like, am I ADHD? I have 3,974.
Yeah, for
and I
sure.
was like, oh, and yeah, I never go back to see him.
No.
Like, I don't even know what's the point.
Yeah.
But I won't stop.
Yeah, I do that too. I mean, I'm literally looking at screenshots right now of the book. But I actually am not using all of them. But, you know, it's just in case I need all of them, they're there. But anyway, so she's sitting in the rain with Jordan, and Jordan has this like irrational fear that she's going to kiss him. And so he's like, okay, if there's a pause in the conversation, she's going to kiss me. So I'm not going to let there be a pause in the conversation. So he uses that as an excuse to like ask her a million questions.
All right.
And so one of the questions he asks is, why do you wear a puppet on your hand? And so she tells this like really kind of sad but happy story about when she was younger. She was playing with her little brother, and her mom was boiling a pot of like spaghetti, and she went to go, you know, answer the phone, and the little brother knocked the pot of water over, and it was gonna burn her little brother's hand. So she pushed him out of the way, and in the process it burned her entire hand and forearm.
Yeah.
And so that's why she's been wearing the puppet. And so he's like, why do you keep that a secret? It's so cool that you saved your little brother. Like, that's such a cool story. And, you know, she's like, do you want to see it? He's like, oh, I don't know if I want to see it. And she pulls the puppet off, and it's like, not even that bad.
Right.
It's just, you know, she's just self-conscious about it. So he's like, that's not even that bad. Like, I bet if you shared that story with the school, they would think that you were a hero. And she's like, promise not to tell anybody. And he's like, well, can I just tell one person? And she's like, sure, you can tell one person. And so he tells Ashley, who's the biggest gossip in the entire school.
So she will tell everyone.
And then she tells everyone. And long story short, Alex becomes like super popular. And so then she stops wearing the puppet.
And it also goes to show like that you don't always know what's behind the things that people do.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought that was like a really cool aspect of the story.
Yeah.
Really sweet. And it gave me the chills like 5 different times. The whole Alexandra story arc I really liked. I was probably identifying with her as a neurospicy individual.
Right.
But anyway, the last big thing that happens is Drew, who's been sick of Andy, the racist white kid, right? Who always talks about
how much money he has.
Yeah, and who says things to Ramon about like tacos and
yeah.
being from Mexico and stuff like that. And so Drew sees the way he treats other people, including Ramon and himself.
And Drew has money too, right? No.
Drew is on financial aid.
It's the other kid.
It's Maury and Jordan.
Maury, the one that has money. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think DeAndre is also on financial aid, but we don't really we don't hear much about DeAndre other than just Miss Karen calls Drew DeAndre.
Just the confusion. Okay.
Yeah. Because they're both on financial aid, whatever. So the other part of this is Andy was on the football team. He was the quarterback, but then Drew came along and he became the quarterback because he was better than Andy. And then Andy accused him of only becoming the quarterback because he goes, "You're always picking on me. The only reason you beat me out for quarterback was because," and then Drew goes, "Because what, Andy?" And then they get into this fight and he ends up like Andy ends up shoving Drew. So Drew shoves him back. And in the process, Andy drops his apple because he was at lunch. He was holding a lunch tray and he slips on his apple and he falls and food goes everywhere. And then he tries to blame Drew.
Of course.
But everyone saw in the lunchroom, okay? And of course, Miss Karen is like, gets really mad and starts accusing him of starting a fight. Yeah. And so she's like she's like, go to the principal's office, whatever. And then Jordan finally, he's like, I can't be quiet anymore. And so he's like, he runs to the table and he stands on the table, which is so dramatic.
Right.
And he yells at the whole cafeteria and he's just like, who else saw, Andy slip on the apple? It wasn't Drew. And who else saw that Andy pushed Drew first? And so then everyone starts to, say, oh no, it was actually Andy who started it, whatever. And then it's so funny because it's DeAndre who goes, yeah, Mrs. R, who's Karen, Lil Man is right. That corny dude slipped on an apple. Because that's DeAndre.
Right.
Yeah. And then the teachers are like, yeah, Karen, we saw it too. Like,
and like,
calm down, Karen.
Why didn't the teacher speak up first?
Right. Of course.
Like, come on.
Yeah. So, and then the last person to stand up is Ramon. And Ramon goes, I saw it too. I'm surprised this isn't tagged. It might be. I don't know. I cut the page number off. Okay. I saw it too. And for the last time, Andy, I'm not Mexican. Oh my God. It's not Venezuelan. It's Nicaraguan. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, it's not,
why did I think it was Venezuelan?
Maybe because of me.
Yeah, maybe. Because we talk about it a lot. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm Nicaraguan. He goes, I'm Nicaraguan. I've been telling you that since kindergarten. And here I am, just showing my privilege like it's nothing.
But that's different because I understand that we read a story and this I do all the time. Mm-hmm. Immediately forget every detail.
Yes. Yeah.
Every detail.
We can blame it on our mom brains.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's horrible.
I'm sorry. I feel kind of silly for making that mistake, but I will own up to my mistake. Okay. Okay. So, and then Drew takes this opportunity to point out to Mrs. Karen who DeAndre actually is. So he's like, by the way, this is DeAndre. We look nothing alike, which is true. They really don't look anything alike. And then it cuts to the scene where all of Drew and Jordan's friends help Drew clean up the cafeteria mess, and Andy's like off in the distance cleaning up his mess by himself because their punishment is they have to clean the whole cafeteria and then go to detention. But all of his friends help Drew, but no one helps Andy because Andy's
a jerk.
Yep. Then Jordan excuses himself and runs to the bathroom and throws up because he couldn't handle all the pressure and all the attention. Because it was really hard for him to do that. It's really hard to stand up for yourself like that. So, let's see. Oh, yeah. Then he leaves his, Jordan accidentally leaves his sketchbook at school, and Mrs. Karen finds it. And she's like, my feelings are so hurt. I can't believe that you would, say those things.
Because he drew about her.
Yeah, and so he drew, like, something, I think it was like, it was about her calling him by the wrong name.
Right.
So it was a comic about him being called the wrong name, and he basically is like, I'd rather be called a stupid geek than someone else's name, because that means they're not even taking the time to look long enough to find something to insult. But they can remember this: I'll have a double mocha cafe latte cappuccino espresso. Which is so true. It's like, you can remember some.
Right.
Like, that's why I should have been able to remember that it was Guatemala, or that it wasn't. Damn it. That it was Nicaraguan. But you know what? Part of this, honestly, is like, everyone has these biases.
Yeah.
And you just have to acknowledge them and just do a little bit better the next day.
Right.
And that's what I will do. I promise. But anyway, she's like crying, and of course it's like the stereotypical like white woman who's using their tears as like a weapon.
Yes.
It's like, oh, you hurt my feelings, but no, Jordan stands his ground, and he's like, would you teach at a school in my neighborhood, just so you could be special? Because Mrs. Karen is like, you're very special that you can come to this school, because you're different, and it's good to be different.
Doing the whole I always screw that word up.
Assimilationist.
Thank
you. Like, you're such a smart black boy that you can go to this school, and you're so special and you're different, but like trying to say like it's good to be different.
Right.
Which, we've all been guilty of.
Yeah.
Saying, but it's like, you can't tell someone who's different that they're lucky to be different, because you don't know what it's like for them.
Right.
Unless you're, actually experiencing the same experiences, which Miss Karen is not experiencing.
No, right.
And so he makes a good point. Like, would you teach at a school in my neighborhood? And of course she wouldn't, but then she'd be very special,
Right. She should give it a try.
Mm-hmm. So the last part of the book, I'll be quick about this, is since he's an artist, he's really bummed about not going to art school, but he ends up taking an art class, but he doesn't like the teacher because she just does like this weird abstract paintings, and he's like, I don't like abstract paintings, like I want to learn how to really draw, like draw real things, right?
Like realism, right?
Yeah, like he's a comic artist, so he wants to draw like people and animals and trees. He doesn't want to do like mixing colors together,
right?
Which I understand, kids don't really get abstract art, but at the end he ends up liking it, and so his teacher is really cool and like understanding, and she's like, what does she say? She's like, just, be loosey-goosey or let it go or whatever. And he's like, I don't really know what that means, but I'll give it a chance. And he ends up creating this, like, awesome piece of artwork. And she goes, wow, I really like that. I like the way that some colors blend while others clash. It's like beneath this calm exterior lies the storm. It's so you, Jordan. And so she was, like, really accurate about that, because it's like, Jordan spent this whole year at this school kind of realizing who he really was,
right,
and like how he could stand up for himself and his friends and all this stuff. And so it actually ends up becoming the cover of the yearbook as a surprise. Cool. So the art teacher like picks his artwork and she turns it into the yearbook for him. And that kind of like really makes him feel accepted into like the culture of the school, and that like the school can actually offer, good things can come from going to the school, I guess, even as an artist, because that's what he wants to be. So I thought that was pretty cool. Let's see if I think that was everything. Oh yeah, then everyone's signing everyone's yearbook, but of course Andy doesn't have anyone to sign his yearbook because he's been a jerk to everyone this whole time.
Right.
So no one wants to sign his yearbook, but of course Jordan, being the nice kid that he is, goes up to him and is like, here, I'll sign your yearbook. And Andy looks super excited, and he's like, thanks, little G or J or something racist.
Right.
And he goes, I mean, Jordan, so he's like,
learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he goes, have a great summer. All right, buddy, I'll see you next year. And then it cuts to Jordan going home to Washington Heights, where his old friends are, and they're talking, about what they're going to do for the summer. And they're like, oh, do you want to go play basketball? And he's like, why are your shorts pink? to Jordan, his friend. And so Jordan's like, they're actually salmon. But he's like, bro, we can't let you go play basketball in pink shorts. And he's like, I got some shorts for you. And then one of his, and then Jordan says, my grandpa always says that friends are like training wheels for a bike. They always keep you from falling down. That's a metaphor. I learned about them in English. Like he's like telling his inner city dumb friends about metaphors, right?
Yeah.
And so his friends are like, actually, Jordan, that's a simile.
Right, like we're not dumb.
Yeah, and they're like, come on, private school, because that's what they call them, private school. Everybody knows that. And so I just thought that was a really cool way to end the book.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, just because these kids go to school, an inner city school, instead of this like rich private school, doesn't mean they don't know shit. I mean, stuff. They don't know stuff.
I like that because I was like, when you first started singing, I was like, ooh, okay, I don't like where that's going.
Yeah. So that was it. That was the last page of the book.
It's a cute book. It sounds good.
Yeah. And I skipped over 217. What they have about 217 where they tagged
216, they said, I've even gotten used to Shorty, Oreo, Light, which is short for light-skinned, and 1,000 names that I've been called. Oh. So I don't know what that's in reference to.
I think that was just Maury talking about how they've been treated differently and how you get used to being called something.
Like it doesn't faze you anymore.
I think that was the spring break thing with the tans and stuff. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah. But anyway, that was, I tried to include, as much as I could there without going too far over. But, like we say in every episode, just read it yourself. It'll be a much more enjoyable experience than listening to us explain it to you. But now you have some context over,
Right. I think that's the main point, is to get the context. Like, here's what they tagged, but, like, really, here's the context behind it and why it's important to be in a book.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, that will close out Black History Month since it's the last day of February.
Yeah. And I'm just going to end it on a good note.
Oh, yeah.
With a 5-star story.
About a private school, right?
Yes. It's a college in New York. So goes with the book a little bit, right?
Ooh.
So students at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York will receive free tuition after a $1 billion donation from a former faculty member.
$1 billion?
$1 billion. So apparently her husband...
Wait, it was a woman who donated $1 billion?
Yes.
Of course it was a woman.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But it was her husband's money.
Well, whatever. She did it. Do you think her husband would have done it by himself?
He was apparently like a stock market investor.
Well, that's why he had $1 billion.
And so, so he left her $1 billion. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, she's 93, so they're up there. They've lived a long life.
Of course.
So she's Dr. Ruth Gottesman, and she spent 55 years as the chair of the school's board.
Okay.
And she made the historic donation in the name of her late husband, David Sandy Gottesman, who was an early investor of Berkshire Hathaway and a longtime friend of Berkshire's famed CEO, Warren Buffett.
Oh.
And so he apparently told her, he left the money to her and said, do something good with it. So I think...
that is so...
She said, I'm very thankful to my late husband, Sandy, for leaving these funds in my care, and I feel blessed to be given the great privilege of making the gift to such a worthy cause.
I love that.
And she wanted to stay anonymous. She didn't want to be, recognized for it. But somebody from the school was like, no, this is a good thing. It's a good example to leave. So that's why she came forward, and she surprised... the college with this. Wow. I don't know exactly the circumstances for this I don't want to call it a rally. What do you call that? When all the kids show up to the auditorium.
What do you call that? I know what you mean.
It's not a seminar. Assembly.
There you go.
So there was an assembly, I guess, with all of them there, and she was discussing, and that's where she let them know that it was going to be tuition free, and all the kids, you see them. I say kids, but they're young adults.
You are a kid until you graduate college. Then you are not a kid.
Yeah. You see the excitement. They all get up off their feet. They're cheering.
I love that the money went towards tuition and not some giant microscope or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And so it also happens to be, from what I read, this is a school in New York. But it's in the Bronx, so it's one of the lower income areas.
That's so cool.
So, usually you see large donations happening in schools in Manhattan, which is a better off area. And so it's also very relevant that this happened in the Bronx.
I love that. That is just a wonderful 5-star story to end. And with that, expect for March to be just as busy as February.
Yes.
We have not decided on the banned books that we're covering, but we know that the theme is going to be female empowerment.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess with that, don't ban books.
Ban bigots. This episode has been engineered and mixed by your hosts, Jennifer Mendoza and Courtney Green.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow us at MILF for Books. That's MILF, the number 4, books, on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it.
And don't forget to help the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.